It seems like Rachel Zegler's career is unraveling, and many believe it's largely her own doing. The release of Snow White was supposed to be her big moment, the role that catapulted her into Hollywood superstardom. But instead, it's become the turning point where everything started to fall apart. It all began back in June 2021, when Disney announced that Rachel Zegler had been cast as Snow White. The internet immediately lit up with reactions, and not all of them were positive. Critics and fans alike were quick to question the casting, pointing out that the original character, as described in the classic tale, had skin as white as snow. From that moment, the backlash began simmering. What was meant to be a career-defining opportunity quickly became a lightning rod for controversy, and some now argue that Disney's casting choice might have been the first of many missteps.
This is not, needless to say, the original story behind Snow White's name. In the original fairy tale, she is named Snow White because she has white skin. That is what the name refers to. She has skin as white as snow. That's why she's named Snow White.
Rachel Zegler proudly embraced her Latina roots from the moment she was cast as Snow White, but the internet wasn't exactly cheering. As backlash brewed over the casting choice, Rachel didn't stay silent. Instead, she clapped back, telling critics to take a breath. Snow White, she argued, is a character loved around the world, including in Spanish-speaking countries. But then things got even juicier. Fast forward to August 2023, and it was revealed that Rachel wasn't the only Latina considered for the role. Another actress, Renata Vega, had actually been one of the final two contenders. That meant the top two finalists for Snow White were both Latinas, a twist that had everyone talking. Renata later spilled some behind-the-scenes tea. The casting call hadn't specified any particular look or ethnicity. All Disney wanted was someone who could deliver a classic Disney princess song, someone who could sing, connect, and bring the magic. And apparently, Rachel had won that race. But wait, it gets even wilder. In October 2024, Rachel dropped a surprising bit of backstory about her version of Snow White. She revealed that in this reimagined film, the name Snow White didn't come from her appearance at all. Instead, it was symbolic. Her character had survived a brutal snowstorm as a child, and the name was a nod to her resilience. According to Rachel, this wasn't just a random rewrite, it was inspired by a lesser-known version of the fairy tale that had its own emotional depth. However, just as some people were warming up to this modern take, Rachel did something that sparked even more controversy. She criticized the original Snow White film. Rachel, young, outspoken, and very much a voice of her generation, didn't hold back. She called the 1937 animated classic outdated and said it sent the wrong message. Why? She asked. Was Snow White's entire personality built around waiting for a man to rescue her? She mocked the idea of the princess saying, "Someday my prince will come," while staring off into the void, arguing that the character deserved more. And then came the D23 Expo in 2022. That's when Rachel fully doubled down. On stage, she said it straight. The original Snow White came out in 1937, and it shows. It was a mic drop moment that instantly divided fans. While some applauded her for pushing for progress, others accused her of disrespecting a beloved classic. The internet, as expected, went into overdrive.
No longer 1937. We absolutely wrote a Snow White that is not going to be saved by the prince. She's not going to be saved by the prince, and she's not going to be dreaming about focus on her love story with a guy who literally stalks. Weird. Super weird. So we didn't do that this time.
Rachel Zegler made headlines once again when she confirmed that the new Snow White would scrap the traditional love story entirely. Despite Disney casting Andrew Burnap as the male lead, Rachel shrugged it off, saying, "Who knows, maybe all the scenes get cut. It's Hollywood, baby." That comment did not go unnoticed. The internet exploded. Some praised Rachel for modernizing the story and moving beyond the damsel in distress trope, while others were furious. Critics accused her of turning Snow White into a girl boss manifesto, and the backlash grew louder. Many argued that the original didn't need fixing, that the classic tale had endured for a reason. Then, branding experts weighed in. Ashton Steen, a media strategist, slammed Rachel publicly, claiming she sounded like she hadn't received proper media training before hitting the promo circuit. And just when the controversy felt like it had peaked, a plot twist arrived straight from Disney history. David Hand, the son of the man who co-directed the original 1937 Snow White, called the remake insulting. He said his father, and Walt Disney, would be turning in their graves. Conservative media pounced. The Daily Wire seized the moment and announced its own Snow White remake, Snow White and the Evil Queen, as a counter to Disney's woke version. Their lead? Brett Cooper, one of the outlet's most prominent commentators. The plan was to release it in 2025, going head-to-head with Disney, but the momentum didn't last. Brett Cooper quietly exited the Daily Wire in December 2024, and since then, the project has disappeared into radio silence. Meanwhile, the original Snow White continued to spiral into controversy. In October 2024, Rachel finally spoke out again in a candid interview with Variety. She looked tired, frustrated. She clarified that she never meant to suggest love had no place in the story, just that it wasn't the focus. There was a love story, she said, but it wasn't the entire plot. She admitted that some of her earlier comments had been taken out of context, and that not all her jokes had landed the way she intended. But for many, the damage had already been done. Her critics painted her as someone who hated the original film, hated romance, and hated tradition. Then came the teaser trailer in August 2024, and instead of just sparking chatter about castle sets and costumes, the conversation took a hard turn into geopolitics. Two major pro-Palestinian organizations, BDS and PACBI, called for a boycott of the film. The reason? Gal Gadot, who played the evil queen, had served in the Israeli military and had been vocal about her support for Israel. That alone would spark headlines. But then people remembered Rachel Zegler had publicly voiced support for Palestine, and suddenly, the film's two leading women found themselves on opposite sides of one of the most polarizing international conflicts of our time. Social media exploded, hashtags trended, debates raged, and the discourse was less about the movie and more about the clash of ideologies behind it. Things escalated even further when reports emerged that Gadot had received death threats over her political stance. Disney had to step in, ramping up security for her in real life, protecting their evil queen off-screen, too. And yet, the biggest surprise of all, Rachel and Gal got along just fine. Despite the online war of opinions, the energy on set was respectful, even warm. They walked the premiere carpet together. No drama, no tension. Just two professionals showing up, doing their jobs, and rising above the noise. But Disney wasn't out of the woods yet. In the wake of the 2024 US presidential election, Rachel stirred the pot once again. As results came in, she posted a direct message online. Donald Trump, followed by a fiery wish that he and his supporters never know peace. As expected, that went over like a lead balloon. Republican voters immediately called for yet another boycott of the film, accusing Rachel of political hostility and disrespect. And just like that, the controversy snowballed yet again, this time from fairy tales to full-on political battleground.
And the freedom of speech was to condemn the very thing that you're paid to build? Are you kidding me?
Realizing just how far things had spiraled, Rachel Zegler eventually issued a public apology. She said she never meant to cause harm and tried to clarify her intentions. But by then, the internet had already made up its mind. The damage was done, and as anyone in the public eye knows, the internet never forgets. Meanwhile, in a completely different corner of the controversy web, another conversation was quietly gaining steam, one that had been simmering ever since January 2022. The topic? The dwarfs in Snow White. It started when actor Peter Dinklage, best known for his groundbreaking work as a performer with dwarfism, called out Disney for rebooting Snow White at all. He dismissed the project as a backward story and questioned why a film with such outdated tropes was being remade in the first place. His remarks made headlines and sparked intense backlash, but not from Disney. Instead, it came from within the dwarfism community itself. Several fellow actors with dwarfism pushed back, arguing that the film represented rare job opportunities in an industry that already offered them very few roles. In response to Dinklage's criticism, Disney tried to do damage control. They promised they were taking a different approach with the 7 dwarfs this time, one that wouldn't reinforce harmful stereotypes. They said they were actively consulting with members of the dwarfism community to guide casting and story direction. That sounded promising, until people got a look at what that different approach actually meant. By July 2023, leaked set photos from Berkshire surfaced online, and they raised more questions than answers. Instead of 7 actors with dwarfism playing the iconic roles, the images showed a mixed group of performers. 1 actor with dwarfism surrounded by 6 others of various ethnicities and genders, none of whom had dwarfism. The photos triggered immediate backlash. Critics accused Disney of swinging so far toward political correctness that they'd looped all the way back around and excluded the very community they claimed to be uplifting. At first, Disney tried to sidestep the controversy, insisting the images were from early production and didn't represent the final cast. But eventually, they confirmed what everyone suspected. Yes, the photos were real, and yes, the actors shown were stand-ins for the new interpretation of the 7 companions. Martin Kleba, one of the few confirmed dwarf actors in the film, was notably absent from the leaked footage. The response from the dwarfism community was sharp. Jason Weeman Acuna, best known for his role in Jackass, didn't hold back. He criticized Disney for replacing what should have been dwarf roles with what he bluntly called 7 average people. Dylan Hornswoggle posted echoed the sentiment and even called out Dinklage directly, saying his comments may have unintentionally cost other dwarf actors real, meaningful opportunities. What was once supposed to be a progressive reimagining had become a PR minefield. Traditionalists hated the changes. Progressives felt the execution missed the mark, and actors with dwarfism felt erased from a story that, for better or worse, had long been one of their few mainstream representations. In trying to please everyone, Disney had managed to alienate almost everyone.
The phrase "go woke, go broke." Right now, Disney, their big blockbuster movie, has plummeted.
In October 2023, as part of a renewed press push tied to the film's long-delayed release, Disney finally unveiled the new 7 Dwarfs. And the big reveal? They were now fully computer-generated characters, stylized to resemble their 1937 animated counterparts. The reaction was a mix of fatigue and frustration. After all the discourse around inclusivity, reimagining, and careful consultation with the dwarfism community, Disney's final move was to sidestep the casting controversy entirely by animating the characters. To make matters worse, the studio made a pointed effort to avoid the word dwarfs altogether. In all promotional materials and in the film's dialogue, the characters were referred to only by name: bashful, doc, dopey, grumpy, happy, sleepy, and sneezy, never by what they were originally meant to represent. For many, this was the final straw. All the good intentions, press statements, and promises of progress had collapsed into a decision that pleased no one. And when the film finally hit theaters, Disney was met with the worst response they could have imagined. Rotten Tomatoes dropped the first blow. Out of 247 critic reviews, only 40% were positive. The average rating? A tepid 5.2 out of 10. Metacritic wasn't any kinder, landing the film squarely in mixed territory with a flat 5100 based on 51 critic reviews. Critics couldn't agree on what the film even was. Was it a soft update? A confused rebrand? Or a cinematic identity crisis? Some found the chaos oddly intriguing. Nicholas Barber of the BBC described the story as messy and tonally uneven, but said that somehow the confusion made it compelling. Dan Rubens of Slant wasn't as generous, calling it a paint-by-numbers modernization of a story that was already showing its age. Amy Nicholson at the Los Angeles Times called the film fascinating, but mostly as a reflection of Hollywood's contradictions, a magic mirror held up to our collective identity crisis. Neil Minow at rogerbert.com said the film had a few functional parts, but ultimately failed to recapture the sweetness or imagination of the original, and then came the harsher critiques. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian called the movie exhaustingly awful, slamming Zegler and Get Out for delivering what he deemed the dullest performances of their careers. Johnny Oleksinski at the New York Post labeled it a lifeless, awkward mess, saying it vanished from memory the moment the credits rolled. Tyler Ting of Discussing Film credited Zegler for holding the film together, but said everything else, from the plot to the acting, was such a clumsy disaster that not even Get Out's unintentionally hilarious line deliveries could save it. Finally, David Fear from Rolling Stone summed it up. It may not be the worst live-action Disney remake ever made, but it might be the blandest. And so, The Fall of Snow White became more than just a failed remake, it became a symbol. A case study in what happens when a studio tries to modernize a classic without a clear sense of direction. A film pulled in every direction by cultural expectations, political pressures, and social media storms until it simply collapsed under the weight of it all. In the end, it wasn't just Snow White who fell. Rachel Zegler's once bright star dimmed with it, and whether her career will ever fully recover remains uncertain.